Good morning, my name is Paul Morrow. I work for Emerson Professional Tools and represent the brands of Klauke crimping equipment, GREENLEE hole punching equipment and rigid mechanical tools for pipework installation and underground inspection. This morning I'm going to talk to you about the perfect crimp, what makes a perfect crimp, things to look out for to make sure that whenever you crimp it's going to make a long-lasting connection. Towards the end of the presentation I'm going to show you some of the new GREENLEE punching equipment and some of the new quicker to act products like Speed Punch. So to start with, I just want to ask you a simple question. Here we have two cable lugs, very simple, and I'm sure a lot of you use cable lugs every day. It's difficult to see, but I'm going to show you. I don't know if you can see there, but they have very different barrel dimensions. One's a smaller lug, one's a larger lug. Both of these lugs are for 50 square millimeter cable. So do you think that the crimping tool you have will be able to crimp both of these lugs correctly? Well, the answer is most probably not, and I'm going to show you why. If you have a crimping die, and more now they're hexagonal in shape, so this would be a classic hexagonal crimping die, and once that die has come together there's no further compression. So it means that the actual shape and size of the cable lug that you use, that barrel dimension, must be matched to the hexagon in your die set. If it is, you can perform a perfect crimp. If it's not, then you could be heading into trouble. And I'll just show you a couple of examples. If your connector is a thicker dimension than the crimper that you're using, then you'll end up over crimping and you get ears out the side, like flash being squeezed out, and I can hold this close, you can just about see there, that's had the wrong die set used. It's over compressed, and if it's over compressed, material can go between the blades of the sides of the die, and it can stop them compressing fully. So the other problem here is it can damage the strands in the cable. If you're over compressing, you can create a high resistance joint. Similarly, if your cable lug doesn't have enough copper in, or the die set is too large, you end up with a not very well compressed, so it's under compressed crimp. Now if you're going to do that, what's happening is it's not making full contact with your strands, so the chances are you may be able to pull the lug off, but certainly with vibration and application it's going to cause a problem and become a high resistance joint, potentially burn out. If you look at the perfect crimp, which has been matched to the cable lug size, this then forms a perfect hexagon. There's no flash on the sides, it leaves a nice imprint of the die reference on the lug to make sure you've used the right die if you're coming back to inspect it afterwards, and that there will give you a trouble-free installation. Not only that, because you've used a system, the manufacturer, in this case Klauke, will have tested that combination. So we will put this cable lug through what we call heat cycling, so it's simulating a lifetime's use of that cable lug. So these will be heated up and cooled down over 1,000 times between readings, and we check that the resistance of that doesn't alter. So we know that's a good joint. We also then put that through a tensile test, so we try to pull the cable lug off to make sure it's gripped the cable sufficiently, and we also go through short circuit testing to make sure it will withstand very high current loads. So if you use a system, you've got the backup of all that test data behind you to make sure that the cable lug is going to not form any sorts of problems and be a consistent result for you. And that's really what you want. When you work with a cable lug, you don't want to be questioning whether it's going to survive a week, a month, 5 years, 10 years. You want to crimp it, forget about it, and know it's a good low resistance joint that's going to go on for many years to come. The other point about using a system manufacturer is there's also a standard for the copper. So pure electrolytic copper, 99.9% pure electrolytic copper is what all of our cable lugs are manufactured from. So this then gives you peace of mind as well that the cable lug has got the right conductivity. If you've got the right conductivity, you're going to have a low resistance and it's going to go on for a long time. Okay, so what I want to show you now is a couple of the tools, okay, and the difference between a 6-ton tool and a 12-ton tool. Okay, so first of all, we have battery-powered hydraulic tools. A battery-powered hydraulic tool is fast becoming the standard tool for most operators because it takes away the manual element, it's quicker, it's more accurate, and now we've got some clever intelligence built in which helps with long-term quality records. So they're much lighter, much easier, one-handed operation rather than two. If you look at this, this is a 6-ton tool, so this will crimp from a 6 square mil up to a 300 square millimeter. The dies will slide in and out of the head and close. Okay. Now, what we can do is a quick crimp on this, and maybe what I'll do is I'll crimp onto here so you can see the effect of the crimp. So you position your tool. I tend to position it in the fixed die so you can be more precise. Pull the trigger, ramps up to force, and then it releases. And you can see there you've made a single crimp, a single impression. Okay, no flash, and it's left an imprint of the die reference on there so you can tell that it's used the right die. If I was to put next to that then the 12-ton tool, what would happen if I crimp this with the 12-ton tool? This is exactly the same type of dies, but they're 12-ton dies. The difference is the bite width. So if you're crimping with 12 tons, you can have a 10mm bite width. If you're crimping with 6mm or 5mm, a narrow or 6 ton, then you have a 5mm bite width. So put those back in. Put these in here. Now I'm going to crimp this. You wouldn't normally do this, but I'm going to crimp it on the same cable lug. It ramps up the pressure and releases automatically. Now what you can see here is the difference in the bite width. You can see the large crimp at the bottom and you can see the small crimp at the top. So that's a 6-ton tool, which is this one here. So it's an inline tool, and the pistol grip tools, like this one, is a 12-ton tool. So it means you can crimp it less often. So to complete that crimp, as an example, with the 12-ton tool, you would crimp it twice, and with the 6-ton tool, you would crimp it 4 times to get the same compression, the same electrical conductivity. So it's important to note if you're using a 6-ton tool with a narrow die, you're going to need more crimps than a 12-ton tool with a wide bite. Now, just a little bit about the tools themselves. All of our battery tools now, you have a choice of either a Makita battery or a Bosch battery, both on 18-volt platforms. You must choose the model type at point of order. You can't interchange. It's either a Bosch or a Makita. It has intelligence built into the back, so you can see here there's a screen on the back of each tool, and this gives you information about the pressures. So the tool itself is monitoring the pressure on every crimp to make sure it's giving you the right amount of pressure to perform each operation. If there's a problem and it doesn't perform the right amount of pressure, then the tool will go into an alarm and it will tell you. So this way it's continuously monitoring. Now it doesn't eliminate the need to get this tool serviced. You'd still need to get a service every year. For an inspection, every 2 years for a service is what we recommend. But it's giving you peace of mind, it's checking it on every crimp. Okay. The head rotates 360 degrees. You've got a comfort grip, and it's all done on a single trigger operation. As you pull the trigger, there is a headlight there which throws light into the area. It's never going to be in exactly the right position, but it does throw light into the area that you're working. So a very compact, lightweight tool, which I would say is the preferred choice these days, is a 6-ton tool, because it's small and lightweight, gets you into those confined areas. With the 12-ton tools, much the same facilities, the same features, Bosch or Makita, comfort housing. You can see here this is quite a heavy head, but it's balanced around the wrist, hence why it'll stand up on its own on the desk here. So it's a very well balanced tool. This will crimp up to a 400 square millimetre, and we have another tool that will crimp up to 630 in a battery style format. So the screen is on the back of the handle here. If I just touch it, it wakes it up. There's a screen on the back giving you the information about your serial number, how many operations it's done, when the next service is due. One nice feature of the 12-ton tools, and I'll just over crimp one of these connectors here just to show you, but it takes a lot of time for the ram to move out, hit the connector. So if you keep your finger on the trigger after the crimp, I'm not going to go with that, it basically does an automatic retraction stop. So it allows you to move the connector across, make your second crimp, etc, etc. So it saves time. So there's a range of tools for different applications and different sizes. So I've just picked two of the most popular to show you, the 6-ton and the 12-ton. What we also have are smaller tools. So the battery operation has become quite a standard, and here we have what we call the micro. So this replaces the red, blue, yellow ratchet tools for bootlace ferrules, for pre-insulated connectors, and copper tube up to 25 square millimetre. This is not a hydraulic tool. This is a battery mechanical tool running off a 10.8 volt battery, plugs into the bottom, there's an electric motor, mechanical assembly, dies are in the head already. They can be changed very easily by unscrewing a thumb wheel, taking the die out, putting the die back in, depending on what size you want, if you want to change it for bootlace ferrule dies for instance. And then what you do with the tool is you can position your connector in the jaws. Yeah, it's not holding anything, so the feel is still very much with your finger, and then when you push it further, the motor takes over and it performs the compression. So anywhere where you have a repetitive crimping operation where you're crimping all day and you get a high handle load, this little tool, the micro, can really help prevent any injuries due to crimping. It's small, it's compact, it's quick, and this also has the same intelligence built in as these two. So if you want to download data from the tool, you can download data either through the Magic Eye on the back, or if you pick up the iPress app from the website, which is a free download, you can actually connect to the bigger 18 volt tools using Bluetooth and download your data that way, or from the micro tool you access the data through the Magic Eye on the back. Okay, so one of the new developments on the battery tooling side is the orange line. The orange line is a range of tools which have been designed to give you additional protection from electric shock. So we all hope that you make sure that the cable is dead before you cut it, but sometimes, especially with underground systems, it can be difficult to trace cables correctly and accidents do happen. So what we developed was a range of tools with an insulation factor. So this tool here and the rest of the orange product range are VDE insulated up to 10,000 volts. So for safe working at 1,000, if somebody was to cut something that was live, then this particular tool would protect the operator. From this point down is completely insulated to the front of the tool. So it's a very nice solution for anybody really working in the electrical power industry. We're not saying, you know, you only take it if you're working in those. Anywhere where you're cutting a cable, there's a potential for it to be live still. So to protect yourself, why not go for the orange line, which gives you that added layer of protection, especially when you're looking at only a 6% premium for one to the other. So you can have more or less the same tool, but in an orange format for very little more. So my recommendation is look at orange before you look at anything else. Okay. So in terms of crimping, let's come back to this. Your two cable lugs, 50 square millimeter, you need to make sure you've got a matched tool to your connector to give you the perfect crimp. Yeah, if you mix systems, mix manufacturers, mix tools, you're leaving yourself open for a high resistance joint. So my recommendation is that you always stick with one manufacturer for the cable lug and the tool and the die. That way you've got a system, you'll be covered by the IEC certification, and you'll be covered by DIN certification, all the testing that manufacturer has done in the background to make sure these are going to be safe connectors that last you a lifetime. So if I move the crimping tools aside, I'll now quickly talk to you about the GREENLEE hole punching. So GREENLEE hole punching, a lot of you will already know how they work, but there's three different standards that I just want to highlight. The first is what we call the slug buster. So the slug buster is a punch and a die system. You pull them together and it cuts a hole in the sheet metal. That's for mild steel only. Okay, if you're cutting mild steel, you can cut that out either manually, hand hydraulic foot pump, or using a battery tool. We then have the stainless steel punches. They're designed specifically for stainless steel. So these are much heavier punches, and that is the same punch size as this one in a mild steel. So if you hold them up side by side, you can see, maybe if I hold them in front of my shirt, you can see them better. They're a much heavier punch for stainless than they are with mild. They need to be stronger because the material is that much harder. They also use a different size draw stud, and that's on purpose so that you don't mix the two systems together. So you've got mild steel, which is slug buster, you have stainless steel, which is slug splitter, and now you also have speed punch, and that's what I want to show you. So the speed punch is something new, which, as the name implies, it tends to speed up the operation. The most of the time that you are working with standard punches, you're threading and unthreading punches, and this can be quite time consuming. So what we've come up with now is a system where you don't have any threads. This is all threadless in terms of a spline. That then screws straight into your punching tool, and this will punch into a foot pump or a hand pump depending on what you've got and what you normally use. The die set, again, just slides over, and you notice there's no need for a spacer on this. These dies have been sized so you don't need any spacers, so it reduces the complexity. You then take your sheet of metal, put that through the hole. Your punch has no threads either, so it just slides on very quick. And then we have a clip that links onto the back, and that holds the punch solid. And what you notice is with a bit of pressure on, you can't now open that. This links into the back of the die so that you can't open it. So it's locked in place. Then when you operate the punch, I'll just put this down. It's very quick, but disassembly is the quickest bit. So you can take that off very quickly, you can take this apart, you can slide it out, and as in the slug buster, it splits those slugs into 2 equal parts, so it's easy to clear it up. And what you end up with is obviously a nice clean hole here. It's not damaged any painted surface, it's an exact size and there's no need to deburr it. If you want to go on from GREENLEE and punches, please don't forget that we do square and rectangular punches. And this would be one of the square punches. They operate exactly the same way. You have a punch and a die and a counter nut. Oops. And you basically pull them through the panel to create your square hole. Squares, rectangles, special shapes, they can all be done because it's lateral motion, it's not rotary motion. So if you think about how much time you will save with a square punch compared to drilling it and jigging it, it's a huge advantage speed-wise and finish-wise, with no damage to the paintwork, remember, to use a square punch. So thanks very much for listening. Hopefully I've explained a little bit more about the Klauke crimping side, why it's important to use a crimping system, and with the GREENLEE hole punching side, the difference between a slug buster for mild, a slug splitter for stainless steel, the speed punch for getting through punching a lot quicker, and the fact that we have square and rectangular punches and special shapes also in the range which you can consider. So thank you very much, and I'm open for any questions. Thank you.